Hey friends, hey guys, hey Billy and Sherry and Gail, how are you guys? Hello, says Gail with her listed entrances. And yeah, what is the word that you use when you say you're like ah you know how I am with words. Your greetings. That's it. That's the word I'm looking for. Greetings. Mm. Did you guys have a good weekend? Hey, Patricia. Did y'all have a good weekend? Did you have a good weekend? Did you have a good Monday? I know I wasn't live yesterday. Hey, Susan. Oh my God, YouTube has been kicking me out. What do you mean kicking you out? Is it being buggy on you? Because it can do that sometimes. It can be buggy. You did, Sherry? Good. Good, good, good. Good, good, good. Well, I have been busy. So, but yesterday, I got my car smogged and other not fun adulty things. What does smogged mean? What does smogged mean? I'm trying to what does smogged mean, Patricia? I'm so confused. Anyway, yesterday was a busy day for me, and then today is Dale's birthday. So, kiddo has not let me out of her sight. Like, the whole day, she has wanted to do nothing but make cards and draw and talk about Dad's birthday. That's all she wanted to do. And every 2 seconds, is Dad home yet? Is Dad home yet? When is Dad going to be home? Is Dad home yet? And I'm like, oh my gosh. So finally, whenever, I saw that he was close to home, we hid and did the whole surprise thing, and there was really no surprise. It was just she made him a sweet little homemade card, and yeah, so in California you have to get a smog test if your car is more than 10. Oh, okay, I gotcha. Ugh. New Jersey, New Jersey. Make sure it's below some threshold of emissions, yeah. And you can't register your car until you get it done. Wow. Okay. They're being all kinds of bossy pants, huh? I mean, jeez. Alright, so, anyway, that has been what today has been. So, but I got a message. Well, in the moderator chat, QB and Morgana were kind of chit chatting back and forth about what was happening in the courtroom, right? So here I was like being all nosy pants, because I have not been watching Karen Reed as of late, and so I got nosy and kind of piddled over there and was listening. Well, then I got a message from Brenda saying, which I hadn't replied to her message. Brenda, if you're here, hey girl, hey. She said, I just saw it flash across my screen. It said something like, have you seen today's The Witness? Brennan's like losing his mind or something. And I was like, oh my gosh. So anyway, I was like, well, why don't we, because there was the trial we were watching ended. There is a new trial that started, but I don't know anything about it. Something about a river, something. I don't know. But I was like, well, let's just go live for a little bit today and just watch just a little bit of this testimony. A lot of you have probably already seen it, but I have not seen all of it. So I've seen some of it. But I want to say the very first few minutes that in the cross-examination, that's what I'm going to start, is the cross. And the cross-examination, the very first thing out of her mouth was like snark. And I loved it. I loved it. Hey, Miss King. Good to see you. Good to see you. Let me share this real quick. Hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. River dumping murder trial. South Carolina versus Megan Jackson. I don't know nothing about it. Share this one. For y'all. Okay, here we go. So, Miss King, what did you think about her very first snarky answer to the Brennan's first question about the afternoon? He says good afternoon, and she says, well, considering it's 6 minutes till, it's not afternoon yet. I was like, ooh. And she does a lot of snarky stuff like that at him. And there, at one point, he says something about a brain resembling the texture of like tofu, and she was like, got all like gross. She was like, oh my god, that's gross. It was so funny. Oh, thank you, Billy. I'll tell him that y'all said hello and happy birthday. Thank you, Patricia, the kiddo. She is adorable. She's the most adorable thing ever. Yeah, right, Miss King? She's very snarky. But she needs to get her Darth Vader under control, man. Lord have mercy. I was like, is she getting ready to have a panic attack? And I asked the girls, I was like, why does she sound like Darth Vader? I mean, maybe she has breathing problems. I don't know. She don't talk. She don't sound like she has breathing problems. It sounds like it's like a nervous thing. You know what I mean? But anyway, thank you, Sherry. I'll tell him. I'll tell him. I'll tell him. All right, let's get started with this real quick. This is so funny. Listen to this.
Good afternoon, Dr. Lapasana.
6 minutes till the afternoon. Good afternoon.
That's okay. You wrote a report in this case, Doctor?
Yes, I did.
Do you think that based on your analysis, was Mr. O'Keefe thrust backwards? Is that what you determined looking at his head injury?
That he was, I didn't understand, you had your hand in front of your
Sure,
mouth.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You talked about a head injury that Mr. O'Keefe had, that
Yes.
he suffered from,
Yes,
that caused his death.
yes.
Was that caused by being thrust backwards?
Yeah, the motion was upwards, down.
Okay. And the way you just showed it could be a fall.
Correct.
Did you have an opinion looking at his wound that he was thrust backwards?
What do you mean thrust?
Well-
His body went backwards. There may have been some applied force to it.
I don't know about thrust. I'm asking if you have an opinion. Your words. Do you have an opinion about thrust?
What do you mean thrust?
Did the forensic pathology diagnosis mean Mr. O'Keefe's body was thrust backward?
If you want to say thrust as indicating movement, that it went backwards, then you could say it was thrust.
Okay, may I approach?
Yes.
I'm filing my nails. I just put new nails on and they're sharp where I cut them, so I have to file
I'm showing you
them. I'll
page
turn
2
my
of your
whole face
report,
on.
Dr. Laposada.
Yes.
I'm just going to ask you to read it, not out loud, and then I can ask you the question if we take it, but I want to
Yes.
take a look.
Yes.
Are you familiar with that?
Oh, absolutely.
So, Dr. Laposada, what did you mean when you described that Mr. O'Keefe's body was thrust backward from a standing position?
I mean that he was standing upright and his body had momentum and went down and hit at the back of his head. So when it was thrust backwards.
You cannot tell forensically how much momentum he had, can you?
No, we don't do those analysis.
You can't tell if anything caused that momentum based on the head injury, can you?
What do you mean causative? It was caused by his body went backwards.
Yes. And so the amount of force causing him to go backwards, that's not something you can determine from the head wound, is it?
No, I can't tell you the amount of force. It was significant because he had the massive skull fractures.
Did you say it would be significant?
Yes, significant force.
In modern medicine, there are a number of different machines that can help us see the brain, like a CAT scan, perhaps,
Sure.
MRIs.
Yes.
Would you agree with modern medicine that the use of MRIs and CAT scans and other tools give a clinician equal, if not better, opportunity to examine the brain as actually cutting it and holding it in your hand?
No, the actual gold standard is the pathology, to be able to have the brain in your hand, look at it with your naked eye. And we have conferences in the hospital where we meet with radiologists and say what we find at autopsy and see if.
Hi, Margaret. Love you. Took yourself out to stay busy. Good. I love you.
Their radiology was correct.
Can CAT scans and MRIs show contusions on the brain?
Well, they might.
Subdermal hemorrhages?
Subdural hemorrhages. Yes, they can.
Herniations?
They can.
Do you have any doubt about the modern medicine and the use of MRIs and CAT scans? Do you think they're inadequate in any way?
Well, I'm not a clinician, so I don't use those to diagnose diseases in living patients.
Dr. Laposada, have you ever had any experience studying the brain in real time, clinically, going and opening somebody's skull and treating the injury before the person dies?
No, I'm not a neurosurgeon.
You don't have any?
So, real quick, I haven't asked Margaret if it's okay if I say this, but I'm going to do it anyway because I love her. And I would love for you guys to put some prayer hearts and prayer hands in the chat for Miss Margaret. Her pupsters. I don't want to say it. You know what I'm saying? Went over the Rainbow Bridge. I'll say it that way. They had to make that tough decision. And they made that decision. And anyway, yeah. So she is beside herself with grief. So I would love it if y'all would say prayers for her and love on her in the chat.
Neurological expertise, do you?
I'm not a neurologist. I'm not a neurosurgeon. I'm a forensic pathologist.
Do you have any clinical experience at all where there's an acute head injury and you're making an effort to observe it and analyze the injury as it progresses in an attempt to save the person's life.
I don't treat or diagnose living patients.
I understand, but as far as your background, have you ever had any experience, clinical experience, showing the progress of an actual brain injury and trying to treat it?
I understand the physiology of what happens to the brain when it is impacted by something, whether it be a bullet, a boulder, a fall. So I know what happens to the body to cause the changes from that trauma. I don't treat people for those injuries.
In observing a brain that's in trauma and making determinations of how long it's viable or whether the person will expire, do you know the process that a neurosurgeon would go through in order to fight to preserve the person or save the person? Do you know the step-by-step process that they would undertake?
To do what?
To try to operate or save somebody from a head injury, from a brain injury.
I'm going to allow it because of prior testimony.
Well, it depends on what the brain injury is. If you have head injury and you have bleeding on the brain that's pushing the brain one way or the other, it would be a subdural. Then a neurosurgeon would come in and try to take that blood away so it doesn't compress the brain. So that's something that neurosurgeons do to treat head trauma. They can also put in drains into the ventricle of the brain, and that can relieve pressure in the brain because that brain swelling is a bad thing. So those are some of the things neurosurgeons do to treat brain injuries.
Can they remove part of the skull to relieve pressure?
Oh, yes, they can do that. It's called a craniotomy. They can take out part of the skull if they need to.
So there are a number of different steps that a neurosurgeon can take when someone suffers acute brain trauma to try to save the person, isn't there?
Well, the job of any doctor is to try to save a human life if you treat living patients. So certainly a neurosurgeon would evaluate the patient and decide if there's any treatment needed that could improve the patient.
When you've had cases in the past as a medical examiner where there have been issues regarding brain injury, wouldn't you agree that you have sought outside consultation with people who have a higher degree of specialty in brain injury than you?
Sometimes what we do is when we're examining the brain, we can call in for a conference and have a neuropathologist come in and review the brain with us.
And back when you were a medical examiner, you did that on a number of occasions, didn't
Yes, that's routine.
The reason why is because there are different specialties in medicine, and some are different and separate than your specialty, correct?
Of course.
And a neurosurgeon or a brain surgeon, it would be a different specialty than yours.
Yes.
And they're focused on the brain, yes?
A neurosurgeon does brain surgery.
And so, how many times in your career do you think that you've assisted the help of neurosurgeons to take a look at brain study to help you?
I've never needed to speak with a neurosurgeon to look at a brain. Sometimes we call in neuropathologists and we have a forensic neuropathology conference where we look at brains with the interns and residents.
How often would you call a neuropathologist?
Maybe once a month we would have a routine conference.
And again, the neuropathologist, that's dealing with a person's brain after they're already died.
Correct.
So it's not a clinical setting or a clinical experience of actually watching the brain at work and seeing the injury as it progresses.
We don't do neuropathology like that on living people. The person is deceased.
You had an opinion to the jury today, and you said that you believe that Mr. O'Keefe died within 15 minutes.
Yes, I think that process would start within 15 or 20 minutes.
Is that to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, that opinion?
Yes, based on the severity of the injury and the brain swelling.
You're aware that there are numerous level 1 trauma centers around the country that deal with brain injury, right?
Sure.
And the idea is that people suffer all types of brain injury, and if they are given medical attention in a reasonable amount of time, there's a chance they can be saved, yes?
Well, it's possible, but many are so severe that they cause death no matter how fast they can get medical attention.
In fact, every day when people get the right attention or proper attention, they're brought to level 1 trauma centers around this country to try to help them or save them. Isn't that fair to say?
I would hope so.
Do you think?
Sure.
When you looked at Mr. O'Keefe's brain, obviously it's after he already expired, correct?
Obviously,
And
yes.
so you didn't have any clinical observation of the progress of his injury that night, did you?
I was not observing him. I did not observe how he got his injury.
When you gave an estimate or you give an opinion about how long he was alive for, are you aware that there's certain tests that are done by neurosurgeons when people are suffering brain injuries but there's an attempt to save them?
Sure.
Have you ever heard of a Guzman coma score?
Glasgow, you mean?
No, but it's Glasgow, but you've heard of Guzman?
It's called Glasgow Coma Score.
Have you ever seen the assessment that a level 1 trauma center goes through when they're trying to save somebody with a brain injury?
I'm generally familiar with the emergency procedures to save somebody's life.
Have you ever read any statistical studies attempting to correlate the brain injury with the time somebody would live for?
I'm aware of that, and I see that in my practice of people who have survived brain injuries and die of something else. Then I can look at the brain and understand how the brain can heal or react to injuries.
And many people who suffer coup contre coup will go into a brain surgeon center, and many of them pass after time, don't they?
Every case is different.
Right. Some might live for an hour, hours, weeks, months, or survive the injury. Isn't that fair to say?
It depends on the case.
In this case, you don't have any objective criteria to identify the amount of time Mr. O'Keefe would have lived if he had the appropriate help. Isn't that fair to say?
I don't think it would have been effective because there were massive skull fractures to the base of the skull, and there are cases where the amount of force and energy applied to the head causing skull fractures, breaking the neurons, causing the brain swelling, despite rapid medical treatment, those people cannot be saved. They can't effectively stop the brain swelling.
Many people can't be saved. You know that about 1/3 of them do get saved?
I don't know what you're talking about. 1/3. Everybody has different sorts of injuries. 1/3 of what?
With a clivus fracture, coup contre coup. Are you aware that 1/3 of those patients survive if they get the proper treatment?
It depends on the amount of force.
Okay. Are you aware that a study would show, have you ever read a study by Isaac Wolf on clivus fractures?
No.
Have you read any studies on clivus fractures?
Clivus fractures? Yes, I understand what clivus fractures are. It's a part of the base of the skull.
Okay.
And
have you,
Oops. Okay, go ahead.
please, did you want to
No,
say?
you go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Have you read any studies that tell you with the proper treatment, despite these potentially catastrophic injuries, that 1/3 of patients can survive?
No, but that's not the case we have here.
And so in this case, I asked if you had any objective criteria. You don't have any objective criteria about the progress of Mr. O'Keefe's wound that can be a basis for you to conclude that he would have died in 15 minutes. Isn't that fair to say?
No, I understand what happens to the brain when it gets that sort of injury. I understand the time course and the physiology. I've seen hundreds of individuals who've had brain injuries. Some survive for a longer period, some die earlier, and it depends on the amount of force and the amount of brain swelling. And in Mr. O'Keefe's case, we had the massive skull fractures at the base of the brain and immediate swelling and subarachnoid and subdural. So he had a large force applied to his head, which caused the brain swelling and the herniate and the progression of the brainstem down through the foramen magnum that stopped the brain. It was a very forceful impact.
You examined his brain after you looked at photographs. You can't tell us objectively when his brain swell started.
It started immediately after impact.
And you can tell us what the progress of that brain swell was by looking at his postmortem photos.
By looking at the postmortem photos and the postmortem examination, I can tell the degree of force from the extensive skull fractures that were present.
What was the degree of force?
It was medium to large.
Well, that's a wide range. What do you mean? Quantify medium
So I'll
to
strike
large,
the comment.
please.
Ask the question, Mr. Brown.
What does medium to large mean?
Enough to cause a lot of fractures to the skull. He didn't just sit down and lie down.
If he sat down and lied down, he probably wouldn't have fractured his skull, correct?
That's obvious, yes.
Right. And so when you're telling us you can identify that he immediately died or died within 15 minutes, I'm asking you for objective criteria. For you to give that opinion, I'm asking you what objective information you have. And so you said that there was a large amount of force, correct?
Sure, but because there were massive skull fractures and there's a lot of energy transmitted to the brain, starts swelling immediately
How do you know this wasn't medium force and not large force?
because of the extensive number of skull fractures.
So are you saying it was medium or large force?
Medium to large.
Okay. How much force is that? Can you quantify it?
No.
What other objective criteria do you have to support your opinion that Mr. O'Keefe died within 15 minutes?
My training and experience of seeing thousands of deceased people from head injuries and knowing some of their clinical course when they get immediate medical treatment, they don't survive.
But you would agree many do.
Depends on the case.
And in this case, you didn't have any opportunity to observe the progress of Mr. O'Keefe's injury that night, correct?
I'm going to allow that.
I wasn't there.
You
The body told me what happened to it.
You have no assessment of the development of his brain injury and how much time it took that night, do you?
I do, from understanding the significant skull fractures and the swelling of the brain and the compression of the brainstem that all happened very rapidly because of the amount of force that caused all those skull fractures on the base of the skull that actually then hemorrhaged into his upper eyelids. That's a large amount of force.
Was gross edema found on his brain?
I think it was swollen, yes.
But was that a finding?
Yes.
Where did you see that finding?
Well, in order to have the herniation of the brainstem, the brain swells.
Where did you see that finding?
I can't answer that. I just know it from understanding, looking at the pathology.
So at the end result, at some point, Mr. O'Keefe had gross edema.
In order to get the brain stem hemorrhages, the only way you get that is because the brain has swelled, and there's no, after injury, tissue swells, and there's no place for the brain to go when it swells, except down into the natural hole in the bottom of the skull where the spinal cord goes down. So that's where the pressure goes. So that seeing the brainstem herniation tells you that the brain has swollen a lot.
Undoubtedly, but it doesn't tell you when it began to swell or the progress of that swell, does it?
I don't know what you mean.
You see inevitably because of the swelling, there's the suffocation, but when you see that, you don't know when the swelling began or how quickly it progressed. You can't tell that from an autopsy.
Yes, you can, because of the severity of the skull fractures. I know there was a lot of force, and that force applied causes you to go unconscious, then your brain swells. If there was just like one skull fracture, then that's a little bit different. But this was massive skull fractures on the base of the skull. So there's a lot of force applied. So I know because there's a lot of force applied to cause the skull fractures, that the brain would swell rapidly.
You would be unable to identify the rapidity of the swelling if you don't know the amount of force. Isn't that fair to say?
Well, I do know the amount of force because of the amount of skull fractures.
In what you know is, in your words, medium to large force.
Yes.
You've heard of periorbital ecchymosis?
Yes.
And that's sometimes called raccoon eyes?
Well, periorbital ecchymosis just means bleeding and bruising around the eyes.
And you saw the bruising around Mr. O'Keefe's eyes, didn't you, in the photographs?
Well, it wasn't bruising caused by blunt force trauma to the eye. It was bleeding in the upper eyelid because the plates above the eye and the base of the skull were fractured by the brain hitting it. So then that's a result of basilar skull fractures and not the application of force directly to the eye.
Would you agree it takes a few hours for the bleeding to accumulate in the person's eyes?
No, as soon as you break the skull bones and the heart's pumping, the blood comes out of those injuries. It starts to accumulate right away. It starts within minutes, you can see it.
So you would disagree with the suggestion that it takes at least 1 to 2 hours for that bleeding to occur in the eyes. You disagree with that?
I do disagree with that. It starts immediately.
Do you have any studies that you've relied on or literature or support for that?
I understand the physiology of what happens when you get those skull fractures and the density of the blood vessels. And if your heart is pumping, you pump the blood out those broken blood vessels into this small area above the eye. And it can happen within minutes.
Do you have any studies or literature to support that?
That's my training experience. I can't cite you a particular article at this time. I can certainly go look it up and bring it to you.
Okay. Let me ask you questions about the wounds to the back of Mr. O'Keefe's head.
Yes.
You see a linear abrasion?
Yes, the vertical lines, yes.
Now, would you characterize this as a classic wound caused by falling backwards and landing on your head?
What do you mean? Every wound is different.
Every wound is different?
Sure, every person's different. Every way you get injured is different.
And so if somebody falls backward on their head and suffers the basal fracture, the wound, from your perspective, can look different.
It depends on the impacting surface.
Wounds on the same surface, say 2 people fell on the same surface, could they have different wounds on the back of the head if they suffered the same injury?
In theory, if they fell, if they rotated their body, if you could reproduce something exactly, then you would see the same wound patterns.
This wound pattern is typical of falling backwards on a hard surface, isn't it?
We know it's from falling backwards and striking something hard.
Can the frozen ground be hard?
A frozen ground can be hard, but it doesn't fit the pattern in this injury.
We'll get to that, but is it
Okay.
hard enough to cause a basal fracture?
It can cause a skull fracture.
The frozen ground is different than a sheet of ice, right? It's not smooth and flat like a sheet of ice, is it?
It could be, I guess.
Okay. You mentioned there's some granular patterns in this wound.
Yes.
didn't you?
Yes.
The area in front of 34 Fairview, the frozen ground, do you know if there was any impediments in the lawn that was frozen?
In the what? Oh, the lawn?
Yeah, sorry.
Yes, I saw the scene photographs when the snow was removed, and it was like winter lawn grass. So it was some green, some brown that was pushed down, and like straw that was going different directions, which wouldn't give you that pattern.
Did you see the exact area where Mr. O'Keefe last moved?
I saw that general area, and there were a lot of photographs, yes.
You say general area. Can you tell us that you saw photographs of the spot where Mr. O'Keefe was lying when he was found?
Yes, that general area.
Could you see the ground where his head was? Can you identify that?
Yes, with the scene investigation, they shoveled the snow off of that area.
And you had never had a chance to go out to that scene yourself, did you?
No, I just looked at all the photographs.
You cannot see what's under the grass and the dirt, can you?
Well, dirt's under the grass.
Well, do you know if there's any rocks or impediments or bumps?
It was a smooth surface covered with grass.
It was a smooth surface? The front lawn was a
It
smooth
was
surface?
a flat surface
Flat.
covered with grass.
Okay, and do you know what was under the grass, whether there was any pebbles, rocks, debris?
I didn't see any.
From the photo.
Correct.
But you don't have any firsthand knowledge that exact area where he ended, what the turf was like, do you?
I saw photographs of that lawn where they removed his body from.
So you're relying solely on the photographs, is that fair to say?
Correct.
Do you know if Mr. O'Keefe was wearing anything that could cause abrasions when he landed to cause that scraping pattern in addition to the linear abrasion?
He did have a baseball hat on, but that would not cause the pattern.
The area of the abrasions, is that in the area of the level of where a baseball hat would be on the back of somebody's head?
It could be.
If somebody hits the ground and falls backwards, can they slide?
And if they're on an incline,
What if they're thrust?
well, if you fall backwards and you fall backwards on an incline, your body might move.
Well, what if you fall backwards on flat ground? Does the body, can it move after it falls?
Not really, maybe a little. If from the momentum of the impact, it might move slightly, but not really.
So when a person falls backwards and lands, you don't think the head has any room for movement?
Not significant.
Well, not significantly, maybe just a quarter inch, half inch.
No, it's possible.
And did you see the scrapes around the wound of Mr. O'Keefe's head?
Of course I saw them, yes.
And they're all within, what, about an inch?
Well, what are you describing? What part? Are you describing the tearing, the laceration of the scalp, or the vertical abrasions?
The vertical abrasions.
There were maybe an inch, inch and a half.
Inch and a half? Do you think that if someone fell backwards and landed on the head, they could move an inch and a half?
Well, he landed on something that had a ridge on it to cause the laceration in the scalp, and then with a little bit of movement, those vertical scratches were caused by some kind of like pebbly-like surface.
You mentioned that the orbital bones were broken and you had opined that it was caused by the brain. Do you agree that a brain is very soft, consistent with, for example, tofu?
Oh, gross. What do you mean? It is soft.
Is it that soft? Is that the texture of
Well,
it?
it depends on what kind of tofu you have.
Okay. Do you think that the orbital could have broken when the break on the back of the head split the skull and then would cause the...
Oh, look at you all. Look at that. Hey, P. Lola. Good to see you, friend. Thank you for the super chat. I miss my friend, she says. Well, we missed you. Did you have a good weekend? The dirt's under the grass. I love her. She is very snarky. I love the snark. Oh, look at that. 10 months. Crime Cafe baby is cutting teeth and walking. Wow, yeah. Look at that. I love it. Here, let me get you guys some sparkle. And one of these. I could watch that one all day. I love it. Thank you. I appreciate it. You guys are the best. Y'all's the best.
The orbital break instead of the brain?
The orbital plate fractures, if you look at the base of the skull, after you take the brain out, you can see the fractures go up from the back to the front into the orbital plate.
tofu comment
Sometimes
made
when
me laugh.
you fall backwards, the brain can also slap those orbital plates and cause some damage, but I could trace the fractures from the point of impact along the base of the skull to the part of the skull over the eyes.
Do you think the base of the skull break, when it separates, could have caused those orbital fractures?
I don't understand your question.
When Mr. O'Keefe incurred that head injury,
Yes.
the basal fracture, do you think that the pressure, the damage from that basal fracture, the separation, could have caused the orbital breaks in his eyes?
Well, the fracture of the plates above the eye, when the blood is still pumping, there's a space there where the blood can come down into the upper eyelid.
So you described the brain as causing that break. I'm asking you, could it have been from the basal fracture, from the skull fracture?
Yes, the fracture that was caused by the impact to the back of the head, radiating to the front of the base of the skull.
So when you told us on direct it was from the brain that caused those fractures, was that just a summary, or is that to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Well, sometimes the brain can also, in a fall, flap and hit those, but in this case, I could also see that the skull fracture started at the back and came to the front, but it could also be contributed to by the brain hitting those delicate bones.
I guess my question is, when you've provided the opinions generally of what you believe and what you've seen, are these general opinions, or are they actually specific opinions based on the facts of this case?
They are opinions based on my examination of this case, but all that's based on my 40 years of training and experience.
Well, when you told us about the brain causing those orbital fractures, you would agree with me, at least now anyways, that it very likely could have been the basal fracture that caused those breaks.
Yeah, both.
It could have been both?
Sure,
Okay, could it have been just the basal fracture?
that's possible.
When you offered the opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, had you considered the basal fracture as the source of those breaks?
Of course.
Is there a reason you didn't share that with us and you just said it was the brain?
I had no reason not to share it.
Okay. Was there any depressed fracture to Mr. O'Keefe's skull?
No.
Can you tell us a little bit about a depressed fracture? Depressed fracture is different than what we saw with Mr. O'Keefe, isn't it?
A depressed fracture is when something fractures the skull and then pushes the skull and moves the skull inward. This just had a fracture, but it didn't move the skull inward.
And you've seen depressed fractures in your practice over 40 years, did you say?
Of course.
In those 40 years, depressed fractures can happen from sharp objects,
Sure.
pointed objects.
Sure.
If someone hit a person in the back of the head with enough force, with like a hammer, for example, that could be a depressed skull fracture, couldn't it?
Certainly. You can hit somebody on the head with a hammer and cause the fracture, and then the continued force will move that fracture into the brain.
There was no depressed skull fracture in this case, was there?
Correct.
You gave some opinions today about you gave some opinions about wounds on Mr. O'Keefe's arm. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about that.
Sure.
Could we have that photo brought up, please? Do you see all of those superficial abrasions?
Yes, I see patterned injuries.
Right. Would you agree that they're superficial abrasions?
Yes, they go along the skin surface.
How many punctures would you identify in that photograph?
Let's see, there may be some punctures like around the elbow, consistent with the teeth puncturing. Most of them are the teeth scraping along the skin.
I'm not going to ask you what you believe the cause was. I'm going to ask you just about the wound. How many punctures do you see?
Well, this doesn't show, there are other photographs which show more of them, but there's the little dot-like areas, you could call an area of skin puncture.
Can you tell us from this photograph how many punctures you would say are in that photo?
I didn't count them.
Did you suggest that there was more than one puncture on that wound?
I think I see more than one, yes.
Pardon me?
I see more than one on there.
Okay, could you give us a count of how many punctures you see?
Well, without looking at all the photos, I couldn't give you a correct number.
Okay. You've written a report, haven't you?
What?
You wrote a report?
I did.
And in your report, you describe many of those abrasions as punctures, don't you?
Yes.
And a puncture isn't just a scratch. A puncture is a penetration of the skin, isn't it?
Yeah, a point-like penetration.
A puncture has a very specific medical meaning, doesn't it?
Yes, it's a point-like penetration of the skin.
And according to you, there are many punctures in that wound.
Yes, I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 or 7.
Can medical professionals disagree on opinions about wounds and causes?
I suppose they can.
You also gave some opinions that you did not believe that Mr. O'Keefe's scratches were caused by having some impact with broken pieces of plastic or glass, correct?
Correct. They weren't caused by that.
Broken plastic or glass can cause a number of different angled wounds, can it?
It causes an array of irregular, random injuries.
It can have infinite different patterns, couldn't it?
Could.
There's nothing to hold a wound from a broken shard to be north or south, east and west. It all depends on how the force is impacted on the body, true?
I'm not quite clear on your
Okay,
question.
I'll try to do better. When you're talking about shards of broken glass and broken plastic, there is no set direction that they may cut somebody, is there?
Well, it would depend on the case and how those occurred.
It can happen in many different forms as far as depth, yes?
Well, anything's possible.
How about length?
What about length?
Wouldn't that change? Couldn't that change depending on how the injury occurred, the length of the wound?
Sure.
And in this case, you talked about your opinions of injury relative to a motor vehicle, didn't you?
That was something I considered.
That's something you considered. Did you know much about the details of the motor vehicle in this case?
Yes.
Okay. When you considered your differential diagnosis, did you consider whether there was any DNA on the vehicle?
I didn't look at any of that.
I'm sorry?
I did not look at any DNA.
Did you know if there was any hair on the vehicle?
I don't know.
Did you consider the scene itself where there may have been a debris field? Did you take a look at the debris field in this case?
I know there were photographs of various pieces of plastic around the area where the body was found.
And do you remember where those pieces were found?
Somewhat, yes.
Did you have an opportunity to consider other evidence like a shoe in the area near where Mr. O'Keefe was found?
I know one shoe was on his foot at the hospital, the other was at the scene.
Do you know if his hat stayed with him after he landed on the ground?
The hat was in the area where his body was found.
Did you take a look at his pants, the back of his pants?
I looked at that, yes.
Okay, what did you see when you saw the back of his pants?
Well, because he had bled from the back of his injury and he was on a hospital gurney, some of that blood came down, so some of the blood was on the back of his pants.
Did you see anything else other than blood on the back of his pants?
I don't remember.
I'm sorry?
I don't remember if I saw anything else.
He's trying to get her to say, about the skid marks. You know what I'm saying? Um, the grass stains, skid marks. So,
Did you look, when you were doing your differential diagnosis, did you look at any evidence other than physical evidence? Did you look at any data evidence?
I don't know what you mean data.
Like data you would find on a cell phone?
No,
Did you look at any of the data evidence from the defendant's Lexus?
no, other than looking at the contours of the back to see if it had impacted Mr. O'Keefe.
When you were doing differential diagnosis, did you look at any information that would tell you what the speed of that impact may have been or allegedly was?
Well, it didn't hit him, so it doesn't matter.
Okay. So you didn't care to know anything about the car or the data in the car because you had already formed your opinion?
It did not hit him, so it was not relevant to my opinion.
Is that a different way?
By looking at the body, I could tell that there was no evidence of impact with a vehicle. So whether the vehicle was going slow or fast is not relevant.
And so you didn't try to get any information about the speed of the vehicle? It was totally irrelevant to you?
Correct.
And did you also disregard, well, let me ask you, do you ever look at statements?
I look at witness statements if they're available to me.
Were any of the defendants' statements made available to you?
I did hear some of them.
Did you consider the ones that you heard?
Of course.
Which ones did you hear?
I really can't answer that. I don't know what you'd have to give me an example.
You said that when Mr. O'Keefe was first incurred his injury, you think that he was unconscious?
Yes, I think that the severity of the impact made him immediately unconscious.
So if hypothetically Mr. O'Keefe incurred his injury sometime around 12:32, is it your opinion that he never moved again until he was moved physically by somebody else?
Well, I don't know the exact time that he got the injury on the back of the head, but after that time, he could not carry out any purposeful activity.
May I approach sidebar, Your Honor?
Okay.
let me bump past this real quick. Zoom, 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 and a boom, boom.
Okay, thank you.
We want to introduce through this witness.
I have it on 1.5 speed.
To remind the court on direct examination,
That's why it looked like Brennan was like walking like his pants were on fire. Hey, Kel.
the defense promoted
Hey, girl.
Dr. Lapasada's credentials, including specifying her successes with the station nightclub fire and her running of her office. We have an audit from 2005, State Department of Rhode Island, Department of Health. In that audit, it paints a very different picture than was presented on direct examination. In that audit, they investigated the chief medical examiner, and they compiled the history of statistics for the medical examiner, which was Dr. Lapasada. There were no reports, incomplete reports, and unsigned reports of over 1,500 individuals between June 30th, 2000 to June 30th, 2005. So in that 5-year period, there was an extraordinary number of individuals that weren't properly attended to, showing negligence, if not malfeasance. It was recommended that the standards, policies, and practices of Dr. Lapasada's office would need to change because of the extraordinary backlog of cases regarding autopsies. In addition, it was noted that the incomplete reports confirmed that there was significant concerns with the historical management practices of the medical examiner's office shortly after Dr. Lapasada resigned. In addition, it was promoted that in the station nightclub fire, Dr. Lapasada had a heroic effort, and in her testimony, she also noted that there was a failure, or implied there was a failure because the medical examiner or somebody did not go to the scene to look at the turf in front of 34 Fairview Road. She suffered the same criticism. For hours and hours after the station nightclub incident, she was contacted with a request to come to the scene. She refused to come to the scene, did not appear for at least 17 hours. Directly on point to the claim that she's making against other people is the same conduct she engaged in on a more extreme scale. She testified in Commonwealth versus Tompkins. In Commonwealth versus Tompkins, she was listed and testified as an expert, attempted to testify as an accident reconstructionist, which was denied. Inevitably, the court made conclusions. Actually, in that case, her efforts to be an accident reconstructionist were denied. Then she testified in a case called Patino. And in Patino, after testifying, she received great scrutiny and criticism from the court. The court noted on page 1025 of the transcript when Dr. Lapasada gave testimony, she knew the boy wasn't like this because he fell off a bed. She knew the mother was lying. She read the text messages and knew the defendant had beat the boy. The only reason I conclude that she offered such testimony was to distance the defendant from causing those bruises, setting up an argument against malice, but instead destroyed her credibility. On cross-examination, she came across as a hired gun. Sometimes it's seemingly small things that impeach a witness's credibility. Inevitably, on the credibility determination by the court would agree. The jury gave greater weight to the testimony of Dr. Gilson and Snelling than they did Dr. LaPosada for the reasons I addressed previously. The jury was justified in discounting her testimony and concluding the other doctors testified apparently impartial. While she appeared as a paid advocate, at least on this occasion, without impugning the witness's integrity, because that witness is known to the court, but in this case, when she testified, she was not credible. That's a direct credibility determination by another tribunal about her testimony. So I would like to, and that's why I came sidebar rather than ambush, to give the court notice that I'd like to get into the criticisms regarding her run as medical director that led to resignment after she was audited and left 1,500 bodies unattended or incomplete. Also get into the criticism she received for her handling or lack of handling of the station nightclub fire, and finally get into the adverse credibility determination in the Patino case.
So I'm not familiar with the Patino case, so I'll need a copy of that.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Jackson, I'll hear you.
Thank you, Your Honor. First of all, Mr. Brennan said that the audit established that, as the chief medical examiner, the audit revealed that she left 1,500 bodies unattended, was his quote, bodies unattended. That's absolutely not what happened in that situation. It was a political situation. The medical director for Rhode Island came in and took over. He began to change protocols and cut quality control. He said he did not want a second set of eyes on any of the reports, not the autopsies. There was never a suggestion, ever, that an autopsy was not performed efficiently and timely. Never. The reports that were attendant to the autopsies it was a two-tiered set of criteria that Dr. LaPosada put in place to establish quality control and quality assurance. First, the medical examiner conducts the autopsy and writes a report. Then the doctor herself, the chief medical examiner, because she is a perfectionist, determined that she was going to establish a protocol in which she would put eyes on every single report, hundreds and hundreds of reports per year. In doing so, she had to prioritize which reports were going to take a priority, which ones were being subject to litigation, which ones were going to be subject to criminal cases, and which ones were never going to be subject to any review at all. For instance, if somebody was found, let's say somebody that was without family, etc., found and unidentified, there's no litigation attendant to that report, she would put that report aside and get to that report after she dealt with the reports that were on sort of on the front burner, if you will. After, by the way, none of the reports were ever not done. They were all completed. There were a small fraction of reports, according to the audit and according to Dr. LaPosada herself, that had to take a back seat. When the medical director came in 2005, by the way, this is 25 years ago, right? These are autopsies that were performed, and the audit was performed for autopsies and reports dealing with the year 2000. It's 2025. This is 25 years ago. When the new medical director came in for Rhode Island, he said, I don't want any review of any of the reports because it's more efficient and it's faster to get the reports out in a timely fashion. She resisted and said, I will never, ever, and she was published saying this, I will never, ever sacrifice quality for speed. I want the highest quality coming out of this office. They had a difference of opinion. She walked away because he was asking her, the new medical director was asking her to sacrifice quality of the conduct that she was undertaking as the chief medical examiner for the state of Rhode Island. So it's a very different circumstance than was just suggested. No bodies were ever left unattended, ever. Certainly did not involve, the other phrase that was just used is negligence and malfeasance. It was a backlog, and they had a very public political fight over it. Number two, with regard to the station nightclub fire, her staff was on location immediately. She, as the chief medical examiner, was there the same day. So that's of no legal moment. It's of no consequence. It certainly has nothing to do with her opinions and conclusions in this case. The Tompkins case, we've already talked about that in voir dire, Your Honor. The Tompkins case dealt with an issue dealing with accident reconstruction, which she's not undertaking. I'm not asking her, and she ain't saying.
I've excluded that part of it based partially on the Tompkins case.
Right, and I don't know anything about the Patino case. And what I would say is, given the fact, look, we don't know what the facts of that case were. We don't know what the trial was about. We don't know what the cross-examination was about. We don't know why she was called. We don't know what she looked at. We don't know why she was looking at what she did look at. We don't know why she didn't look at things that she might not have looked at. We don't know why her opinions and conclusions were ultimately rendered. We would have to have a trial within a trial, which I would be happy to undertake if someone gives me a file. Happy to do that. But I don't think we want.
Okay, I'm gonna have to slow it down because he's talking a little bit too fast for my brain to comprehend.
Want to do that. I don't think the court wants to do that. Also, I will say, I don't think that attacking this witness's credibility is in good faith by the Commonwealth. Mr. Brennan himself has hired Dr. LaPosada personally no fewer than 4 or 5 times. Maybe it's 3 or 4 times. He knows her qualifications. He knows the quality of her work. He's actually undertaken to consult with her as a medical examiner and a consultant. So I don't believe that these last 2 issues are in good faith. I don't believe the station fire has anything to do with anything because she was late, according to Mr. Brennan, in coming to the actual location. She was there the same day, and she had an entire staff that was there immediately. And in terms of the audit, it's a 25-year-old political fight that isn't quite what Mr. Brennan made it out to be. So I don't think any of these things are relevant for cross-examination. I'll submit.
All right.
I just want to make a note that Attorney Jackson has a way with words to just inflate or make things up. I have not hired Dr. Lopesada 4 or 5 times. And so that is just a mischalculation for what he likes to do for the public. But the reality is, I've used her a few times, and the last time I used her, I'm not going to disclose why I don't use her anymore because it would be unfair without her in the room. But the suggestion that somehow I'm endorsing the qualifications of this witness, I am not. That's what I'm going to say on the record.
Okay. So the first two, the backlog issue, if we can call it that, with the ME's office, I'm going to allow the Commonwealth to get into that through questioning. Same with the station nightclub fire, based on the testimony already in evidence. Those two areas, and Mr. Jackson, without leading, you can certainly go back and rehabilitate her. But those two will come in. I'm not going to do anything with Tompkins because I used it for the basis of keeping out what appeared to me to be biomechanical engineering opinions of this witness, and she's not qualified to do that. So I have not read Patino. I will read it over the lunch break and see if we get anywhere with that. Okay, so I need a copy of that. I want you to give Mr. Jackson a copy as well. Okay?
Yes, copy.
Okay, so, all right.
The only other thing, I don't know if we're going to handle it now or after lunch or later, because I want to address the issue of the three.
Okay, so let's mark those now.
Sure.
Can we mark them all as one, A, B, C?
I have no preference one way or the other. It's just three. They're all
Mr. Jackson, if you can I just read it?
Of course.
ID, yeah.
Yeah, it would be, yeah. Just mark.
You know what, show me that one again, too, please.
Exhibits H, quadruple H, and I, through I.
All right. All right, Mr. Brennan, there's no objection to these coming in through another witness, so you agree that they'll be coming into evidence?
I'll stipulate
All right, and what's the objection to them coming in through Dr. Laposada?
it's not part of the reporter opinion. She's gone beyond the reporter, talking about the fact that she's studying x-rays and giving an opinion. I think that suffices. It really, I think, is beyond the scope of her testimony to begin with, and I'd be gracious with it. Stipulate these, and sure Dr. Wenzel will utilize them if stipulated.
So you'll stipulate to them prior to Dr. Rentschler?
I will.
So you can use them with Dr. Rentschler?
I expected that I could because he certainly used them in his analysis and opinion. But I should be subject to the entry of evidence in the defense case in chief. I understand I can use them in Dr. Richard's testimony, but I want to use them with Dr. Laposada. She's a medical doctor.
Would you-
Considered them for purposes of her opinion. I cannot understand.
So what do you want to ask her about them?
Are these the x-rays that you reviewed? Yes, that's it.
Okay, okay. So go ahead.
And that's all he's going to ask, and I won't have a problem.
Okay, yeah, I have no problem with that in that form.
That's it. Literally, so the x-rays that we talked about a little bit earlier, yes, this is the right hand, yes, that's the arm, forearm, yes, that's the upper arm.
All right, so they're cumulative, but if they're coming in anyway, I will let you put them in.
Thank you.
All right, so the last thing is Dr. Rentschler. I need to hear argument from both sides. I have a new PowerPoint, so I'll hear both of you. Mr. Brennan, I'll hear you on your motion.
We've received the most recent update to Dr. Rentschler's PowerPoint. There are some additions, different analysis in that PowerPoint. This is within 24 hours of him testifying. There are opinions on page 6 and 8 of his May 7, 2025 report. And there are a number of numbers that we have objections to. Dr. Rentschler just generally shouldn't be allowed to express opinions and conclusions about what he thinks about the case or about other
All right,
witnesses.
so I'm looking, I think, at the new,
Do you have a copy of the new one?
from today, page 6. So what I have are just photos with measurements, so I don't know what the testimony that corresponds with those. I've read, obviously, the report of Dr. Rentschler from May 7th. That does not seem to detail everything, and that's no criticism, I'm just saying it's a scant report, so I don't know what the opinions are regarding these.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
I didn't want to speak over Mr. Brennan, I apologize. I just wanted to let the board know you've gotten that out now. We went through, based on Mr. Brennan's discussions last night, and significantly edited the entire thing, literally every single slide that you had a problem with. There were a couple that we just literally left, but it's very, very.
I see that a lot of the hearsay has been removed.
Okay.
And I can identify this report.
I'm sorry?
I can identify this report, it's all the one that were changed.
All right.
It made 2 minus.
So what are you both I'm going to hear from Mr. Brennan first. What are you objecting to as the report now stands?
I have a most recent copy of the report now. So 9 through 27,
Slides 9 through 27 or pages?
slides 9 through 27 now have Dr. Rentschler identifying and attempting to match different abrasions with different holes in Mr. O'Keefe's sweatshirt. And so basically what he is trying to do is to suggest that there are a different amount of abrasions relative to the amount of holes, or perhaps he might want to testify about that the holes in the sweatshirt were in a different place on Mr. O'Keefe's arms than the abrasions. The reason why this is concerning is because there is no background for him regarding fabrics. This is a different and new opinion that we have not prepared or obtained an expert for. We probably have very little time to get somebody to rebut this analysis regarding fabrics. I don't see anything in his CV or his history that allows him to equate the number of holes in fabric with the number of abrasions on somebody's arm. It does not consider or account that there could be multiple wounds from one hole, or there could be holes that don't create wounds. So whatever the implication is going to be by Dr. Rentschler, we're not very sure, but it obviously would require some type of expertise, which I do not think that Dr. Rentschler has a foundation for. So those are 9 through 27 generally, and then specifically, I can run through quickly the individual objections I have. Slide 6 tries to define the theory of the alleged incident. It doesn't say whose theory it is. It implies it's the government. It's an improper suggestion.
Hold on. Okay, so which one of 1, 2, and 3 on 6?
1 is objectionable. What's the core issue of the case? It's an ultimate issue for the jury. An expert reconstructionist or a biomechanical engineer shouldn't be defining the core issue of the case. And then 3, first event is alleged contact between the rear of the Lexus and Mr. O'Keefe's right arm. Again, that's offering an opinion that doesn't have facts and evidence, not in position to draw that opinion.
And is 2 okay? Before we move into the whole slide,
No, on number 6, all 3 of them shouldn't be there. Asking what the core issue is in the case, Dr. Rentschler or no expert should be defining what the core issues in the case are. They should talk about their training experience, any testing, observations, evaluation, and then give their opinions, not core issue in the case.
all right?
Slide 9 outlines perhaps his process. The first step of the analysis to determine if the arm injuries are consistent with the physical evidence. Evaluate the abrasions and compare the evidence. I suppose this is what he's done. This is one of the less offensive ones, although unnecessary. It doesn't provide an opinion. I could live with that. The next one,
You could live with what?
number 9.
Okay.
Number 23. Again, this gets into that new core opinion about trying to identify or, I think, compare the abrasions to the different wounds. I think the part that's objectionable is the words measurements, question mark. I'm not sure if it's implying failure of somebody else. It seems to be an opinion, and I'm not sure of the context of it. 24. The expert is trying to define what Dr. Welcher had done. It may be that he's saying he conducted his testing based on the position of Dr. Welcher's arm. I think that would be an appropriate comment, but it's not clear what they're saying. The pain transfer test, number 2, is the only test noted with respect to the arm.
So without the text, are you objecting to this
No.
slide?
No.
Okay.
31 posits questions regarding ultimate opinions. I think it's inappropriate. And then 32, I think, is improper because it ultimately endorses or vouches for the witness's credibility. I think he certainly can give an opinion that the evidence is inconsistent with the injuries to Mr. O'Keefe's arm, but I don't think it should be on the slide bolstering his opinion. 33, again, it's posturing the weight of the evidence. And it's resigning the government to a particular study, one study. It's really a commentary on the government's case. It goes like this. Number 1, Dr. Welcher only did A, and second part, A is insufficient. So that's really what this is saying. It's commentary, it's hearsay, it's inappropriate. 34. I think if one said that that's what he did, I, Dr. Rentschler, took a step to determine the kinematics of Mr. O'Keefe's arm during the alleged incident and asked how would this arm move, I think that would be appropriate. But he shouldn't be giving a opinion on what steps should have been taken by Dr. Welcher. Number 2 on slide 34. And number 3 I don't have a problem with. The next one is 46. Again, this is bolstering the expert's opinion by putting it in writing on a slide. I think some of these opinions are appropriate for Dr. Rentschler to share with the jury, but his final ultimate opinion shouldn't be endorsed on a slide. 47. Again, this is self-endorsement of the success of his tests and giving his opinion about his success. Number 1 and 2, I think, are inappropriate. Number 3 has really no context standing alone. And number 4, if he notes that's his next step, I wouldn't have a problem with number 4. Okay, slide 54. Again, number 1 gets into his opinions. Number 2, he gives an opinion about a different expert, a medical opinion. And number 3, it's, again, self-endorsement on his own opinions. So all these are opinions either bolstering himself or somebody else's work. I don't think it should be in a slide. 55. I think it's accurate. I think it's proper testimony. I don't think it's proper for a slide. Same with 56. I don't know that he has the basis for number 1. Number 2, I don't have a problem with on slide 56. And number 3, again, it's bolstering his opinion. So I think 1 and 3 are improper too. Not. Slide 58. I don't know what the basis for number 1 is. I suppose we'll have to see. If these are Dr. Rentschler's views, I don't know how they're relevant to the Commonwealth's case, but certainly I think he has the experience to make these conclusions, but it shouldn't be in a PowerPoint. He shouldn't be commenting on the reports of another expert in a PowerPoint, number 3. And number 4 is ultimately an opinion that he's self-endorsing. 66. Again, it is an opinion. I don't think it's an admissible opinion. and it shouldn't be in a slide. He's trying to draw a conclusion on what the jury should conclude based on the Commonwealth's evidence. He's not in a position to do that. 67. Parts of this are objectionable. I think that he certainly could testify. He hasn't seen any simulation by Dr. Welcher, but posturing it about in a manner that suggests there should be doubt in some way is inappropriate. 68, I don't think Dr. Welcher's report was introduced, and putting in a fraction of a report, I can't appreciate the significance of it. It's hearsay. Perhaps there's a reason he'll be able to point to the report or talk about the report. I understand that, but putting in a random page from a report is hearsay. Should not be admissible. I don't know if there's going to be a conversation about trying to introduce the entire report, but one page will take it out of context. 72. I think the expert has a basis of the opinion. I don't think ultimate opinion should be in PowerPoint because it's self-endorsing. 74, again, it's a conclusory opinion, it's bolstering. Some of these can be said but shouldn't be in PowerPoints. Same thing with 75 and 76, they're ultimate conclusions. And so I'm not in agreement with all of the conclusions that the expert may try to introduce, but testifying about ultimate opinion and putting it on a board to self-endorse shouldn't be permitted. And those are my objections.
Okay. Ms. Little?
Thank you, Your Honor. First of all, there, tell me if I stand here only because I'd like to be able to reference the PowerPoint.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. First of all, there were no additions, just to be clear, to the PowerPoint. The only changes that we made were directly in response to the objections that were filed by the Commonwealth. We did delete a large section, trying to accommodate some of their concerns, as well as shorten some of the opinions. So those were the only changes. I just wanted to be clear before. There are no additional opinions that have been set forth in the PowerPoint. With regards to slides 9 through 27, that was not one of the issues that was identified in the Commonwealth's motion. They objected to slide 9. There's half of the slides are not referenced.
I do agree. It's a new objection. I just don't know when there's an objection raised how a biomechanical engineer is qualified to testify to tears and clothing.
So this is a direct test. His testimony is going to be based on his knowledge of forces and forces applied to certain objects and how that results in injuries.
And I understand that, but some of the specifics that he says, I'm just saying I had a concern, so I understand it's new.
I think that we'll be able to satisfy the court's concern by laying proper foundation.
All right, so we can come back to the fabric argument or whether it's beyond his scope of expertise. But actually, Ms. Little, if I can just ask you, and I can hear you later, as I assume everybody wants lunch and we're coming back in at about 20 of, quarter of at the latest. Can you just explain to me why these slides, if Dr. Rentschler is permitted to express these opinions, why we also need them on slides? That's the problem I have.
I think that's a great question, Your Honor. And the reason we didn't use some slides is because we objected to Dr. Wilkie coming in on his PowerPoint.
So I looked at that yesterday.
Copy of the specific opinion that was placed up on the screen with regard to his opinions and conclusions. That was done over the defense's objection.
So which one? Because I did look last night at that and did not see it.
It's slide 136, Your Honor. The totality of the evidence.
Hold on one second. Is it a conclusion page?
I don't know. I just.
Hold on.
But it's page 136. It's entitled Evidence for Lexus Economy. And it states the totality of the evidence is consistent with the right rear corner of the Ray 2021 Lexus in and Mr. Oki, striking the rear posterior aspect of his head on the further ground.
Okay.
So if he's allowed to do that.
So that is different than what I said he could be asked on his ultimate question, right? But it still came in? Was there, I'm sorry?
Yes, that came in over the
All right. Because what I did know is that I was very careful to say exactly what the ultimate question could be from Mr. Brennan. In fact, there were objections. I sustained them twice, so I wrote out exactly what could be said, and Mr. Brennan asked a variation of the first one, and there was no objection. So I didn't remember that this came in. All right, so I will take a look at that. What I would like to do in the interest of time, so maybe we can talk about that in the conclusion page, but where he outlines everything else, there's so many pages with text that I may not have a problem with testimony regarding this, but why do we need testimony and text so much here?
This is just, this is very,
It's what?
just this is very, there is a significant amount of information that needs to be related.
Okay.
This is an 80-page PowerPoint. This is solely to make sure that this goes efficiently and effectively. I think it's helpful for these, you've narrowed down the text on the slide significantly. It's important to see those PowerPoints.
Okay.
Just to the major issues. I think we've streamlined this a lot, but I think having the PowerPoint will allow us to make this go smoothly and quickly.
All right, so I will look at these. What I'll try and do is if there are any changes in the first 15, I'll try and get those done during lunch, and then we can have this argument afterwards. All right. All right, we'll see everybody no later than 1:15.
Okay. Hey, Mary Lou. I was going to type in the chat, but my keyboard is wireless and it's basically dead. So, like, I try to type on it and it, like, acts like it's going to let me, but then I'll try to type a letter or two and then and it's blinking at me now. So, I'm going to have to go plug it up and charge it. But how are you doing? I love that you're in your recliner. Patricia says if doubling down was in the dictionary, this case would be the first example. Right. Bev is something else. I see things haven't changed, but I didn't think that they would either, so. You're doing super? Well, that's good. That's good. Brennan definitely had some of the wind taken out of his sails, yeah. I love the snark that pathologist threw at him. Like, she wasn't playing. I was like, go girl, go girl, go girl. Yeah, well, I'm 15 minutes past what I wanted to spend. I told Dale that I would only be on for about an hour. So it's been an hour and 14 minutes. Today is his birthday. So I'm going to go spend the rest of the evening with him. And it's Taco Tuesday night. So ready for some dinner. But anyway, I'm going to tell you guys now. Kiddo, since summer break has started, which I know you guys have noticed, is very needy, clingy, constantly needing to be entertained. So, since there are no, like, trials that I'm currently, well, I mean, I haven't even been watching Lori Vallow. She has not allowed me to watch anything, really. So, anyway, I think that what I'm going to do is take the rest of the week off, you guys. But I will plan on doing a members only, maybe on Saturday night. If that works for a lot of you guys. I'll schedule it and plan it, and yeah, we'll get together on Saturday night and have a members only chitter chat like we did the last time. So I think that'll be fun. But anyway, I was afraid this would happen in the summer months because she's just not allowing me to get what I have to already get done. And I'm falling behind in other work matters. So anyway, it is what it is. But yeah, Mary Lou, that's normal. Yeah. She is the boss, Sherry. She is the boss. She does what she wants to do, right? Oh, thank you, Gail. I appreciate it. All right. I love you guys. I hope you have a great rest of your night, and I hope you have a great rest of the week. And members, I will see you on Saturday night. I would say probably about 10 p.m. Eastern. That way it gives the people on the West Coast, time to hang out too. So, anyway, I love you too, Mary Lou. You're welcome, Margaret. We love you. All right. Love you guys, and I'll see a majority of y'all on Saturday. All right. I'll see you then.